Havana was founded in 1515 by Diego Velázquez, although not in its present location. In 1553, the capital of Cuba was shifted from Santiago de Cuba to Havana due to the increase of its economic importance as the commercial center of the Caribbean. Plaza Vieja has had an interesting history, falling from grace to bounce back and become one of Havana's most vibrant gathering spots. Originally laid out in the mid-16th century, Plaza Vieja was an important marketplace for the citizens of Havana. It now has beautifully restored buildings and arcades surrounding the central area, where a small fountain from the late 18th century stands. Old Havana, with its narrow streets and overhanging balconies, is the traditional center of part of Havana's commerce, industry and entertainment, as well as being a residential area. The Convent of Santa Clara was the first nunnery established in Havana. It came into existence due to the lack of an institution that allowed some of the town's notables to give their daughters a proper religious education. It's formed by 3 cloisters of 2 stories and a garden area. The main cloister includes a wide and luxuriant central courtyard surrounded by corridors with sturdy rough stone arcades at the outer limits on the lower story, contrasting with the simple wooden bases of its higher story. The other 2 cloisters are smaller. Plaza De Armas is the first known public square in Havana. It was located on the spot which later on in the 16th century was occupied by the Castillo de la Reale Fuerza. It wasn't until 1935 that the prestigious architects Evelio Govantes and Felix Cabarocas drafted projects that involved the recovery of the plaza. Havana is one of the most beautiful and architecturally diverse cities in the world. Its architecture mirrors its rich social and political history, from the graceful colonial and Baroque period to modern brutal tower blocks. Over the years, the streets received their names in an informal way, be it the appellative of some neighbour, the allusion to a noted event, the presence of a leafy communal tree, a temple, a trade, or for other worthy reasons to be remembered. Simón Bolívar was one of the most important leaders of Spanish America's successful struggle for independence from Spain. The influence from different styles and cultures can also be seen in Havana's colonial architecture. The old Havana entire area, covering a total of 143 hectares, was declared a national monument in 1978 and a World Heritage Site in 1982. It preserves 88 monuments of historical and architectural value, 860 of environmental value, and 1,760 harmonious buildings. At the beginning of the 20th century, along with Buenos Aires, Havana was the grandest and most important Latin American city. This boom period, known as vacas gordas, fat cows, demonstrates huge examples of buildings from the international influences of Art Nouveau, Art Deco and Eclectic. Around 1540, there was a fortress called Fuerza Vieja, Old Forces, in the place later occupied by the Castillo de la Real Fuerza, the castle of the royal forces. The Catholic Church played an important role in the conquest and colonialization of the Americas. Thus, religious buildings are among the most significant in the American continent. From the 16th century on, the advantages of the natural rocky elevation that lay by the bay's entrance, called El Moro, became evident. In the beginning, 2 outlooks were posted in this place to watch over the area. Since Old Havana was made a World UNESCO Heritage Site in 1982, dozens of buildings have been restored within the city. The Church of Our Lady of Mercy is the work of Rodrigo de Liendo. Construction began in 1549 and finished in 1555. The cornerstone of Merced Church, a beautiful building in the Italian Baroque style, was laid in 1755, but the church was inaugurated in 1792. The architect, Joachim Weiss, stated, "If the cathedral marks the climax of Baroque in Cuba, La Merced is its descent into neoclassicism. One of the most sumptuous churches in the city, with great wealth in its ornamentation, it has a wide central nave and 2 side aisles, all 3 covered by vaults supported by an arch linking the 3 naves. The central cupola lends it a special light. This Catholic church is also the object of syncretization, as the religions originating in Africa venerate the Virgin of the Mercedes as Obata. The decor of the building belongs to the second half of the 19th century, and some renowned Cuban painters were involved in it. San Francisco Square persists in its fight against time. After 3 centuries, it still shows a beauty that knows no age, and that makes it one of the most attractive centers in Old Havana's geography. Known to many in the late 17th century as the most important square in the walled city, its construction was linked to the trade movement between Spain and its colonies in the Western Hemisphere. That's why the first customs building on the island, the governor's house, and even the town hall house were located there. Since the beginning, the square was surrounded by the homes of the most distinguished families of the new Havanan aristocracy, who had, in San Francisco Church neighboring the convent, the inquisitive thinking of the Counter-Reform. St. Francis of Paula Church was built in 1664, originally as a hospital for women and as a hermitage. After they were both destroyed by a hurricane in 1730, they were rebuilt in Baroque style. In 1907, it became the property of a private entity, which intended to demolish it in 1937. The hospital and part of the church were indeed demolished in 1946, but not without raising fierce controversy. It was renovated in order to host concerts of Renaissance and medieval music. After the Parroquial Mayor, Havana had a second temple, the Espiritu Santo, Holy Spirit. The Iglesia del Espiritu Santo was built in 1638 by Afro-Cubans, who were brought to the island as slaves, but later bought their freedom. Appropriately, it's the only church in Havana authorized to grant political asylum. It contains several notable paintings and a crypt with catacombs. This is the most recent of the city's great squares. During the second half of the 16th century, some inhabitants had their houses built in this square, which they called Plaza de la Chinaga, Swamp Square, because this was where all the waters from the city gathered before pouring into the sea and mixing with the tides. During the 18th century, the square became one of the city's key centres. Some of the most renowned upper-class families in Havana had their residences built there, some of which are still standing today. The Catedral Metropolitana Santa Maria Della Encarnacion is the first cathedral in the Americas. Originally, it was a hut made of royal palms in 1514. It now takes up an entire block. Diego Columbus set the first stone, and since then, many additions and changes have been made to the original structure. Inside, there are Roman-style arches and Gothic-style vaults, with some Baroque ornaments thrown in for good measure. Like many of the colonial-era structures, this building has been able to withstand the test of time and man. The building has been used as a slaughterhouse and also as a prison. It was a wine and provision storage facility used by the pirates when it was ransacked in 1586 by Sir Francis Drake. From the resplendent Spanish colonial architecture of the old town to the spectacular dilapidation of Havana Center, a city of staunch survivors and masterful musicians rocks tirelessly to the syncopated beat of the rumba. Cuban traditions are rich, in part due to the racial mix which brings together religions, music, arts, culture, foods, drinks and more from several places in the world. Here we've explored the diversity of Cuban traditions.
Queste carezze inondate, questa passione